Hey guys, it's Mrs. Brewer, and today we're going to start the last chapter of Percy Jackson. I can't believe we're almost done with the very first book, The Lightning Thief. So let's go ahead. When we left off, Percy had just left his mom's apartment with Gabe, and she was sitting there looking at Gabe, wondering what he'd look like as a statue. So let's keep reading. Let's see what's going to happen next. Chapter 22. The prophecy comes true. We were the first heroes to return alive to Half-Blood Hill since Luke. So, of course, everybody treated us as if we'd won some reality TV contest. According to camp tradition, we wore laurel wreaths to a big feast prepared in our honor, then led a procession down to the bonfire where we got to burn the burial shrouds our cabin had made for us in our absence. Annabeth's shroud was so beautiful, gray silk with embroidered owls. I told her it seemed a shame not to bury her in it. She punched me and told me, "Shut up." Being the son of Poseidon, I didn't have any cabin mates. So the Ares cabin had volunteered to make my burial shroud. They'd taken an old bed sheet and painted a smiley face with X'd out eyes on the around the border and the word loser real big across the middle. It was fun to burn. As Apollo's cabin led the sing-along and passed out s'mores, I was surrounded by my old Hermes cabin mates, Annabeth's friends from Athena, and Grover's satyr buddies who were admiring the brand new searcher's license he'd received from the Council of Cloven Elders. The council had called Grover's performance on the quest brave to the point of indigestion. Horns and whiskers above anything we'd ever seen in the past. The only ones not in the party mood were Clarice and her cabin mates, whose poisonous looks told me they'd never forgive me for disgracing their dad. That was okay with me. Even Dionysus's welcome home speech wasn't enough to dampen my spirits. Yes, so the little brat didn't get himself killed, and now he's gonna have an even bigger head. Well, hurrah for that. And other announcements, there'll be no canoe races this Saturday. I moved back into cabin 3, but it didn't feel so lonely anymore. I had my friends to train with during the day. At night, I lay awake and listened to the sea, knowing that my father was out there. Maybe he wasn't quite sure what to think about me yet. Maybe he hadn't even wanted me born, but he was watching. And so far, he was proud of what I'd done. And as for my mother, she had a chance at a new life. Her letter arrived a week after I got back to camp. She told me Gabe left mysteriously, disappeared off the planet. In fact, she reported him missing to the police, but she had a funny feeling they'd never find him. On a completely unrelated subject, she'd sold her first, life-size concrete sculpture entitled The Poker Player. She'd sold her first life-size concrete sculpture entitled The Poker Player to a collector through an art gallery in Soho. She'd gotten so much money for it that she'd been able to put a deposit down on a new apartment, made payment on her first semester's tuition at NYU. The Soho Gallery was dying for more of her work, which they called a huge step forward in super ugly neorealism. But don't worry, my mom wrote. I'm done with sculpture. I've disposed of the box of tools you left me. It's time for me to turn to writing. At the bottom, she wrote a P.S. Percy, I found a good private school here in the city. I put down a deposit to hold you a spot in case you want to enroll for 7th grade. You could live at home, but if you want to go year-round at Half-Blood Hill, I'll understand. I folded the note carefully and set it on my bedside's table. Every night before I went to sleep, I read it again and tried to decide how to answer her. On the 4th of July, the whole camp gathered at the beach for a fireworks display by Cabin 9. Being Hephaestus's kids, they weren't going to settle for just a few lame red, white, and blue explosions. They'd anchored a barge offshore and loaded it with rockets the size of Patriot missiles. According to Annabeth, who'd seen the show before, the blast would be sequenced so tightly that they'd look like frames of animation across the sky. The finale was supposed to be a couple of 100-foot Spartan warriors who would crackle to life above the ocean, fight a battle, and then explode into a million colors. As Annabeth and I were spreading a picnic blanket, Grover showed up to tell us goodbye. He was dressed in his usual jeans and t-shirt and sneakers, but in the last few weeks, he'd started to look older, almost high school age. His goatee had gotten a little thicker. He'd put on some weight. His horns had grown at least an inch, so now he had to wear his Rasta cap all the time to pass as a human. "I'm off," he said. "I just came, well, to say, you know." I tried to feel happy for him. After all, it wasn't every day a satyr got permission to go look for the great god Pan. But it was hard saying goodbye. I'd only known Grover a year, yet he was my oldest friend. Annabeth gave him a hug. She said, "Keep your fake feet on." I asked him where he was going to go search first. Kind of a secret," he said, looking embarrassed. "I wish you guys could come with me, but humans and Pan..." "We understand. You got enough cans for the trip?" "Yeah." "You remembered your reed pipes?" "Geez, Annabeth, you're like an old mama goat." But he didn't really sound annoyed. He gripped his walking stick and slung a backpack over his shoulder. He looked like any hitchhiker you might see on an American highway. Nothing like the runty little boy I used to defend from bullies at Yancey Academy. "Well," he said, "wish me luck." He gave Annabeth another hug. He clapped me on the shoulder and then headed off through the dunes. Fireworks exploded to life overhead. Hercules killing the Nemean lion, Artemis chasing the boar, George Washington, who, by the way, was a son of Athena, crossing the Delaware. "Hey, Grover," I called. He turned at the edge of the woods. "Wherever you're going, I hope they make good enchiladas." Grover grinned, and then he was gone, the trees closing around him. "We'll see him again," Annabeth said. I tried to believe it. The fact that no searcher had ever come back in 2,000 years, well, I decided not to think about that. Grover would be the first. He had to be. July passed. I spent my days devising new strategies for Capture the Flag and making alliances with the other cabins to keep the banner out of Aries' hands. I got to the top of the climbing wall for the first time without getting scorched by lava. From time to time, I'd walk past the big house, glance up at the attic window, and think about the oracle. I tried to convince myself that the prophecy had come to completion. You shall go west and face the god who is turned. Been there, done that, even though the traitor god actually turned out to be Ares instead of Hades. You shall find what was stolen and see it safely returned. Check. One master bolt delivered, one helm of darkness back on Hades' oily head. You shall be betrayed by one who calls you a friend. This line still bothered me. Ares had pretended to be my friend and then betrayed me. That must be what the oracle meant. And you shall fail to save what matters most in the end. I had failed to save my mom, but only because I'd let her save herself. And I knew that was the right thing. So why was I still uneasy? The last night of the summer session came all too quickly. The campers had one last meal together. We burned our part of our dinner for the gods, and at the bonfire, the senior counselors awarded the end of the summer beads. I got my own leather necklace, and when I saw the bead for my first summer, I was glad the firelight covered my blushing. The design was pitch black, with a sea green trident shimmering in the center. "The choice was unanimous," said Luke. "This bead commemorates first son of the sea god at this camp and the quest he undertook to the darkest part of the underworld to stop a war." The entire camp got to their feet and cheered. Even Ares' cabin felt obliged to stand. Athena's cabin steered Annabeth to the front so she could share in the applause. I'm not sure I'd ever felt as happy or as sad as I did at that moment. I'd finally found a family. People who cared about me and thought that I had done something right. And in the morning, most of them would be leaving for the year. All right, guys, we are actually going to stop there because this next part doesn't have a very good stopping spot and you've got to hear it all together. So I can't wait for you to come back tomorrow to find out one last exciting thing that's going to happen before the story's over. See you tomorrow.